Welcome to another edition of Member Spotlight. I'm Curtis Dean with CBAN. Member Spotlight is our podcast video series where we dive in deep with some of our CBAN members, and really excited to have our CBAN member on today, who's fairly new to the CBAN ecosystem. This is Randy Luening from BroadbandToolkit.com. Randy, thanks for coming on.
Good, delighted to be here.
Did I say Luening right?
Leaning like in the tower.
Leaning, as in the Tower of Pizza, not pizza. Tongue in cheek. Yeah, so great to have you on, Randy. You joined CBAN back here this summer, and your company is doing really cool things. So we wanted people to be able to hear about what you're doing and what you offer, and the tools that you have in your toolkit and how they might benefit people. So thanks a lot for coming on.
Great, delighted to be here and excited about being just what CBAN is doing and connecting communities and others.
Great. Well, we're happy to have lots of great partners like you guys to do that. So we're going to be talking a little bit about all the things that you do now, but I'd just like to kind of maybe have you share a little bit about your background. Some of the things you've done in the past, and got a couple slides here that you're going to walk us through, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's great. So I'll just as a bit of introduction, I've been in the telecommunications industry for several decades. There are a lot of folks in the industry who maybe political leaders or attorneys or other things like that. I come from pretty much an industry perspective. I have 2 electrical engineering degrees and an MBA, and I've been doing telecommunications business cases across segments of the industry for 35 plus years. Mm-hmm. I was initially in the satellite industry doing spaceborne hardware design. I was then in the cellular industry, and our company grew from a regional, Baby Bell cellular company to one that had a footprint in 26 countries. So that was a fantastic journey of corporate growth and personal growth, and just seeing technologies have a sweeping impact. I did one of the first commercial LEO satellite business cases, and sort of we funded one of the early programs, a couple decades before the current generation. And I've done industry analysis and consulting. Our company was a state contractor in during the FirstNet era, where we did a lot of wireless analytics. And then just generally, I've been doing kind of corporate strategy and finance and deep analytics. And what Broadband Toolkit does is actually we do deep, very, very deep analytics for broadband providers and private equity investors and counties and states and others who want to use their resources wisely as they invest. And and sort of as a side gig, what else? The other thing that I do quite a bit is participate in national webinars and write things. And what you have on the screen there is industry press. These are a few things that have been just in the last year or so. A lot of them related to analytics and BEAD. Mm-hmm. We have a piece of software that does demographics and sort of digital opportunity analytics. So tons of stuff there. We can circle back to those.
Well, you'll have to add another element to your slide here, because you can now say you were on the CBAN's member spotlight.
Definitely. And then let's go to the next slide too. And this is super quick. So this is an example. We do lots of white papers, and the way I think about it is a white paper, at least the kind that I write, it's bigger than a newspaper article, but shorter than a book. And in this case, I wrote something just because there was a lot of discussion on, what is the role of satellite in the industry. And this is neither pro or con, but this is really trying to inform the dialogue. And I did 3 extensive and interviews with industry experts, and gave a lot of background on how they work, and actually the context that even if you didn't use low Earth satellite as part of programs like BEAD, they're still very consequential. But anyway, this is just an example. And other things, like we have one white paper on how you use Ookla data, another on what is a location in sort of the RDOF regulatory framework. So lots of exciting stuff there.
Great.
And then let's see, maybe, yeah. And then this is, and this is a slide, and I know many users are listening in their car and may not see it, but this is a picture where just of what our toolkits do. And this visualizes areas that currently have fiber in red, and areas that are prospective build areas in sort of an avocado color. And what it does is, behind the scenes, is running all sorts of deep analytics. It's calculating the road lengths, and it's adding them all up, and it's giving you a result of dollars per home passed, or per unit passed, across the area. And this is an example where this is our Fiber Strategy Toolkit Pro, and this is something that lets someone who's an investor literally zoom around the country and find a state and say, wow, this community is unbuilt and it's affordable, we should invest. So very powerful tool.
Absolutely.
And then maybe just one more slide. So this is an eye chart, and again, this is something that for those of you who are audio listeners, it has a bunch of inputs and a bunch of outputs. And this is a slide which either people will say we should spend an hour and a half going through this, or I don't understand it, let's move on. But basically what it does is on the left-hand side, it shows a bunch of parameters, like demographics, spatial analyses of units per mile of fiber, the buried versus aerial mix, drivers of adoption, sources of capital, ARPU, tape rate, so forth. And these are things that we can pretty much help a customer frame up all of this. We've got data sets for most of these things, and brilliant tools. And then there are a bunch of more general assumptions about how you model a broadband network. And then on the right-hand side, you've got valuation and cash flow metrics, your EBITDA, EBIT, cash flow, free cash flow, NPV, and then sensitivity analyses. And sort of our thought is that if you're going to invest serious capital in infrastructure, you better do all of this stuff. And there aren't a lot of tools to really help you do it well. So that's one of the things we're trying to enable.
Fantastic.
Good. And so that's the end of my slides.
Excellent. Well, let's just talk then, because there's a lot to digest and parse there, because you're talking about data, you're talking about analytics, you're talking about information intelligence, whatever you want to call it, and all of the factors that some company would take into account when making a decision about something as important and irreversible as building a fiber network or any kind of network. So talk a little bit about how have you gathered all this data that you're using, these data points that are being applied to, provide this intelligence?
Okay, no, that's a great question. So first of all, I think there was one of the Fed officials who talked about being a data hound, and the Federal Reserve has a lot of data hounds, and I think I'm a data hound. So basically we scour the planet for spectacular data sets that will inform decision making, and so these all get sort of integrated into tools, and a typical tool may have 100 to 200 data layers, and a lot of it too is you can take kind of broad data sets. And so if you look at FCC BDC data as an example, you can crunch that and statistically analyze it in spectacular ways and correlate it with other data sets in a way that no individual could ever do. It's just such a broad and daunting task. But we do that for our toolkits and then visualize it. And so that's kind of where we come from. And then what emerges is we've got a whole bunch of software products, but also we have a services component where, if you're a town or a city or a county, you might think, we don't really want to buy a software tool, but we'd love to see the results.
Mm-hmm. I like that that model you take where you leave it to the user to decide, is this I want to have the software in my toolkit and use it whenever I want, or do I want to be able to call up Randy and his team and say, hey, I need some help me with this piece. Yeah, that's really good. Data has been, well, what's interesting about broadband data to me, Randy, is it seems like some of it is readily available. It's out there. You got hands on it. There's probably others that have hands on it. And then other pieces of very important data are really kind of kept behind, if not a wall, a paywall. Talk about things like, the national broadband maps were created and CostQuest was hired to do that. And CostQuest did a lot of number crunching and all this stuff. But you and I, or well, maybe you can, I can't look at that data. If I'm a small operator, I can't see that data. And so talk a little bit about that. Does that frustrate you as a data science that we, the people, paid for this data and data collection, yet we don't get to see it?
Absolutely. In fact, well, here's what's really interesting. I think if I were in a position of influence with the FCC a few years ago, rather than doing a contract with CostQuest, I might have instead started with all of the existing location address data sets, of which there are many, and maybe done block grants to states to clean up areas that they didn't have covered. And that would have actually been very beneficial, because it would remove a lot of the barriers that now exist in the public to using the data. And so what the way we sort of handle it is the FCC in their broadband data collection process basically marries a portion of what they get from CostQuest with actual reported data from operators, and basically presents it in two different through two different views. One is a block level view, where it's based on census blocks. The other is a view based on level 8 hexagons, and there are pros and cons to each. But basically what it does is it doesn't resolve it down to the exact pinpoint address, but it's very close. And when you look at broadband planning, it's close enough, and it's one.
It's almost one
data set, and there are other data sets that are very precise and free and so forth.
Well, we talked about this the other day as we we're kind of preparing for our conversation about a lot of times to explore whether a project is feasible or possible, first you have to start at the high level and gather the, like you said, the kind of data that is available. And then that will help you decide whether or not it's worth going to the next step. And if it's going to the next step, then you have to drill back in and, maybe get actual, that pinpoints that you talked about.
Yeah, and I guess one thing that I know that I'm passionate about is just when we think about how does a community approach the problem, and I think with CBAN this is it's all about communities. I think first of all, a community is a really important entity because there's a confluence of factors. You've got oftentimes a felt need, a motivation for change, and also a political entity that can actually act. So these are all very important. And what people often, what I've observed in the industry is there's sort of a default process where people often commission a feasibility study or a master plan, and they may pay $50,000 to $250,000, and it often takes 6 to 12 months. It's often interview heavy as a process, so there's a burden on the town or county or whoever is commissioning it. The work product often has a lot of boilerplate text, some good analysis, but no guarantee of an actionable result. And one state which will remain unnamed, but every state is spending money on technical assistance. They had a program where they offered this for free to all of their counties. Only 12.6% enrolled, and they spent about 125,000 per county. They had well-known, nationally branded names doing the work, and the results were too late for BEAD. Then as a lot of it emerged, I interviewed a lot of the counties, and it was very, people were in many cases sort of underwhelmed. And so to me, this sort of pushes back and says that the process that is available today, that a lot of people follow, is not functioning well. And so our approach is completely different. So what you'll find oftentimes with people who do feasibility studies is they'll often put a lot of effort in selling the project, and once it's sold, then they'll often throw the task to a GIS team that starts from scratch.
Yes. Yeah.
Our approach is exactly opposite. We have invested heavily over a period of years building tools that are so capable that no one would ever imagine building them for one county or one state. And they basically include data for every county in every state. And so and they let you do gap analysis and competitive analysis and fiber deployment economics. And what's also important is it enables us to move really rapidly. So part of our goals is one, and I think any county or a city should have a goal of failing fast. So if they're a very rural area and they're thinking about deploying fiber and the economics are just so horrible that it's absolutely never going to work, they need to know that, not at the end of $100,000 engagement, but maybe on day 2, and it's not hard to figure out. And then our other commitment is we'll come in and do spectacular analytics for oftentimes 1/10 of the cost and 1/10 of the time. And again, because we've invested upfront in the tools. And so we're we've up to this point been very tool heavy, but we did a recent study of a small town just to show people what could be done, and it was about 65 pages long, and did an exhaustive gap analysis, and it did pre-BEAD planning, and had a fiber plan. It costed out the fiber infrastructure, had all sorts of caveats, showed everyone competing in the space, had opportunities if they wanted to get a nearby ISP to invest. They could deliver this to the ISP and say, here's what we think you should do. And the ISP would sort of fall off their chair because no town or city does this, but yeah.
Well, we've actually, our CBAN team has done that in several instances with communities to help them do a little, not with the kind of toolkit you have, although the future that we may be using your toolkit. So we'll have to load that in our truck of tricks. But we've done this in the past to try to help a community identify the need and identify the demand, and then take that out to the ISPs in the region and say, hey, you want to go build a network here. And it works. Yeah. It can work if the numbers are right, and if you've got the intelligence, if there's enough data there and there's enough information to convince an ISP that this is not a risky investment, this is a smart and sound investment. So we got a few minutes left. I pick everybody's brain about BEAD because it seems like a constant source of industry irritation. But what's your perspective on how the BEAD, how the BEAD rollout has gone? If you were czar for a moment, what would you have changed?
Yeah, so we're in a very, very interesting time. So first of all, I would draw a contrast between the way BEAD has been implemented and say other data oriented programs, or even other funding programs have been run, like with a lot of FCC programs where you had an auction, boom, a lot of moving parts, but then it happens and it's done, and a lot of data collection. Say if you look at the broadband data collection, states do things and they submit it to an agency, and the agency packages it up and pushes it out there, and it's clean and robust. Part of what's interesting with BEAD is it's been all the data is emerging into state level and is all subject to this change or that change or something else. And so so right now we have out of 56 eligible entities, 53 that have reported to our territories. We're waiting primarily for California, but even those that have reported, it's not a done deal yet because it's subject to NTIA changes and other stuff. So
what's interesting about, we've had this great effort over the past few years to map broadband across America, and the problem with any kind of map is it's a snapshot in time, and the snapshot is going to be outdated. If you ever go on Google Earth and look at pictures, you'll have you'll scan through a neighborhood, and suddenly you'll get to this block of picture on Google Earth that was obviously taken in the winter, and next to it is a block that was taken in the summer, and you're like, okay, this is one of these is more updated than the other. And I think sometimes it feels like in the industry that the maps are that way too. The second the map is drawn, it's probably inaccurate almost.
Good. And actually, let me say two other just quick things. One about BEAD is that in some areas with BEAD, you're seeing a very deep build out of fiber. In other cases, it's more like a shotgun approach where you may have 50 homes and 3 are getting fiber. And so right now, what we're doing for clients is we're unpacking that data, and we're showing here's where you're actually getting a serious build out, and here is not serious. And so that's very important. The other piece too that we're doing and thinking a lot about, which is at least worth mentioning, is the whole concept of municipal fiber, and sometimes it's described as a PPP, but the idea of a town using its power to issue municipal bonds to fund something. And what's really interesting is the pros are there's tremendous power in having municipal financing because it drops the cost and all sorts of things becomes available. The negative is that political leaders don't have a lot of appetite for risk, and appropriately so. And so if they're going to go down that path, they need to have really good data. And so we're hoping to be one of the parties to really supply, spectacular quality data to those who have an interest in that area.
Well, Randy, if anybody's listening or watching this podcast and they want to reach out to you and they want to deploy your services, your toolkit, how would they do that? I've got your website address up here on the screen for those of you watching on YouTube, and we'll have this in the description if you're listening on a podcast platform. But I assume your contact information is right there at BroadbandToolkit.com.
That's correct. Yep. So you can email me or call me. We take telephone calls. I know it's a shocking thing in the 21st century, but we do take inbound telephone calls. So that would be great as well.
You're a friendly sort, Randy. People will want to call you, I think. And you and I have had some great conversations, and I'm sure the great conversations will continue as we move along. Thank you for becoming an associate member of CBAN, and we greatly appreciate your insight and hope to see you doing some more good work as we move forward.
Good. Well, very excited about all the stuff that CBAN is doing, and look forward to meeting other members.
Absolutely. We'll try to get you to our spring summit next April. We'll,
okay, sounds great.
Reel you in for that. Okay. Our guest today, Randy Luening, Randy Luening, and he is with BroadbandToolkit.com. Our guest today on this edition of CBAN's Member Spotlight.